Hi, I'm Jill. Thanks for joining me. Today we'll learn some basic anatomy about where the hip sockets are located and then explore some gentle movement, which will be helpful for releasing stuck stress in your hip sockets. And all you need is your body. I will see you on the inside in just a few seconds. Hi, let's visualize the hip. So first of all, just a quick anatomy lesson. This is your hips and pelvis and legs. So your pelvis is made up of these two pelvic halves, and obviously this is not exact or to scale. And then your hip sockets lie deep inside of there. So I like to think of it as your pelvis kind of makes up the lower part of your torso, and your hips make up the top part of your legs, but your pelvis or the pelvic halves and your hips come together to form the hip joint. So it's all involved in creating the joint structure. And the reason that it can be helpful to visualize that anatomy on your body is because it can create clarity of movement when you have a clear vision in your mind's eye of where that joint is located. So an example of that is just often in lay terms, we'll say, put your hands on your hips, but that's actually the outside of your pelvis. So a lot of us go around thinking that our hips are clear out here, but our hips are actually much deeper inside of our body. And so just having a clear image of where they're actually located can help unwind tension patterns that take place inside of the depth of the hip socket. The other thing about the hip socket is that it's pretty close to organs. And so it's all like all of that tissue is interconnected. And so it's typically not any one thing that's causing a stress or a tension pattern. So just having a very clear vision of where your hip is located can be helpful to create ease in it. Okay, so go ahead and stand up with me and just take a moment to notice where you naturally land. And then once you've kind of arrived, take a look down at your feet and notice where they're at. Is one maybe pointing out and the other pointing forward? Maybe you notice that your weight is only on one leg or the other. And you don't need to fix any of that right now. I just want you to take a mental note of where you're at. And then go ahead and draw your attention without fixing your stance to where your hip sockets are located. So we found the outside of our pelvis, our pubic bone, and then come deep into the hip socket. And then see if you can organize your connection into the ground around those hip sockets. So now you get to go ahead and bring your feet underneath you. And if they're under the hip sockets, that's going to mean maybe like 1 to 2 fist widths apart between your big toe joints. And then we're just going to start with some hip movement. So we're going to start with gliding. And you can take your hands anywhere is comfortable for you. You can just bring them together, place them on your pelvis, but you're just going to ground through one foot as you glide your pelvis really gently in the opposite direction. And the key here is to not lose your connection into the ground through your foot. And just keeping in your mind's eye where your hip sockets are located as you glide side to side, and imagining that those pelvic halves are just gliding effortlessly across the tops of your hip sockets. And then come to rest, and let's just shift back and forward. So finding your weight on the balls of your feet, your heels might come up gently, and shifting back. Whoa, you might need to use your arms to counterbalance a little bit. And see if you can, and I'm not showing a great perfect example, keep your feet grounded as best you can as you shift forward and back. It's not super easy unless you're completely centered. So it's a test of really how grounded and centered you are today at this moment in time. And then let's connect the dots. Just pick a side, take it forward, take it side, whoa, back. You might find some snaggly areas, side, forward, side. Notice that your arms can help you, and back, and let's reverse it. Take it side, forward, gliding effortlessly in the hip socket, side, whoa, back, and side. And then just rest. You can reshuffle your feet and notice if you feel a little more connected into the ground and have an even more clear sense of where your hip sockets are located and that you're really centered and oriented to your hip sockets. And then we're going to take a hinging motion so the hip can glide. That's what we just did. And now we're going to hinge. So that's a squat. So imagining again where your hip sockets are at, nice and deep, and they're going to sink even deeper into the socket as you come down. Do what you need to with your arms, and as you gently unfold, they come towards the front of the socket. They sink deep to the back of the socket as you fold and crease, and they come towards the front of the socket as you extend. Again, sink and crease. Let them float towards the front of the socket as you extend. Again, soften and crease like you're a soft cloth. Imagine your entire body to be like a soft cloth, and unfold and sink and crease and unfold and just hold, shake it out. Again, notice if you feel maybe a more general sense of organization and just check back in. If you kind of started out here or here, notice, okay, I feel a little more organized to my hip sockets now. And then let's go into some circumduction. So again, we've glide. Anyway, we did some gliding, we did some hinging, and now we're going to circumduct. So to circumduct in standing, you actually have to glide first over your support leg, and then flex a little bit to extend that opposite leg. And then we're going to make kind of a half circle is really what it's like, or a capital letter D. And again, sensing that the motion is coming from deep in the hip socket, and noticing that there's also some micro adjustments that are happening in your support hip socket. It's not totally static. And reverse your direction. You might notice that your heart rate's coming up a little bit as you stand on one leg. And coming, whoa, just to an end point there. Just shake and reshuffle. And then shift gently with a glide over your support leg. Bring that other leg out and find some gentle circumduction. Again, you can kind of play with the arms, do what you need to make a whole body connection. And taking a couple more, easy and fluid in the hip socket, and never losing sight of where that motion is located. And reversing. And just noticing the quality of your breathing and your surroundings. And finishing out there. And again, come to wiggle. And place your feet together, notice your weight. And then let's just do one thing here where we're going to hinge, but we're going to hinge with some rotation. So it's kind of combining two things. So step your feet a little bit wider than hip width now, and then gently rock back onto your heels and open out just a little bit from the hips. And you can place your hands on your hips or your pelvis there. I used that confusing term, or anywhere that's comfortable for you. And then we'll just come into a plie or a squat, a sumo squat maybe that you know it by in this organization. So just gently coming down and extending up and sensing what has to happen in the hip socket to allow freedom at the knee joint if your feet are staying connected to the ground. That there is some spinning, some rotation in the hip socket between the pelvic half and the hip socket as you go down and extend up. Again, creasing softly and extend up. Just take a couple more, gently creasing and extending, and rest. Just come to find yourself in whatever place feels collected to you after all of that. And close your eyes for just a minute and let your arms just fall wherever feels comfortable. And draw your mind's eye again deep into your hip sockets. And just notice any sensations that occur. You might notice that there's always motion, that there's a gentle sway. If you ever join me for a Qigong, you might know that as bamboo in the wind. And then you can open your eyes, and thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.